Hi everyone, Arry again. I am the co-chair of the US Blockchain Coalition, and I'm also the host. For this particular event, we co-hosted it with Nick Ellingson of the WTIA and also Jonathan Blanco from TF Labs in his space in Belltown. Very great space. And so for this panel, we talked about use cases of Web3 and AI, and it actually ended up being like use cases and builders. Very, very interesting conversation. It was moderated by Jonathan Blanco, and our panelists were Matt Sorg from Solana Foundation, and we also had Robert Mao from ArcBlock. I hope you really enjoy this conversation. It was very, very insightful. And don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. And don't let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks. Together we rise. So we have Matt from Solana, Robert from ArcBlock, and Jonathan will be moderating this panel. So is everyone sitting? Great. We'll be kicking this off.
In like 4 seconds, sorry.
4 seconds.
Oh, it's not working. Does anybody have a good joke while I fix this?
I think Matt painted the crypto car with me in Miami a few years ago at that party.
Wiggle the mouse.
What's that?
Do you need me to wiggle the mouse so the back
No.
stays up?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay.
Oh, this is why.
That was full market vibe.
That for sure.
Sorry, I just started babbling.
Oh, no, it's all good. It works. I had it was the wrong camera. The camera was the wrong way.
Okay.
I don't know dad jokes.
Well, what about the sunshine? Yeah.
Okay. Good day for barbecue versus yesterday.
I hope many of you will be staying for
Which, by the way,
tonight.
do people know that? Do people know that we're having a barbecue this evening? We're having Blocktoberfest instead of Oktoberfest, even though Oktoberfest, I guess, is actually in September. I don't know if anybody knows that. It's usually at the end of September. But yeah, we'll be having Blocktoberfest, and so we have some nice Wiener Schnitzels, and no, we don't have Wiener Schnitzels, but we do have bratwurst and some beverages and some pretzels. So it'll be a good old time. I'll start at 5 o'clock. But we're here to talk about AI, Web3 use cases. We have 2 folks here with us that are in the blockchain space, working at the protocol level. So I'm really excited to welcome them. Before we kick them off, my name is Jonathan G. Blanco. I'm the founder and CEO of TF Labs, as well as NIFMint. TF Labs, we host a number of events, and then NIFMint, we do NFT infrastructure. So basically boring stuff around NFTs and how we think that people will actually be utilizing it in the day-to-day. So with that, let's go right to left, or left to right, if you're all looking, but for me, right to left. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hey, I'm the head of technology at the Solana Foundation, which generally facilitates the Solana ecosystem. My background is a lot in AI. I went to UW for economics, so I was doing econometrics, applied statistics, and then did data science and AI for Riot Games, and then I did it, yada yada yada, and all that stuff. But like Unity, I headed their AI, was for largely reinforcement learning and some generative art, and then got back into blockchain about 3 years ago. Yeah, getting back into the Solana ecosystem. Yeah.
Hey, my name is Robert Mao. I'm a founder and a CEO of ArcBlock. ArcBlock is a company that focuses on building decentralized application platforms to help developers to build all kind of DApps. So we are blockchain agnostic. Actually, we can support many kind of different blockchain applications, including Ethereum, include Solana. We actually have a Solana supported in our wallet. And from last year, we think when we see the AI is rising up, we think AI is actually, especially the large language model, the generative AI, I think that's a perfect fit as a module, as a function module for DApps. And we also think there's a lot of interesting overlaps between the AI and the decentralized applications. So that's how I started to incubate a small team to work on some AI-related stuff, plus the Web3. And we built some of very interesting and very fun applications I can share with you later. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Web3 was the hottest thing ever a couple years ago, but people forget that a few years before that, AI was the hottest thing ever, right? And then AI kind of had this dip and everybody forgot about AI for a second, and people cared about Web3. I tweeted something the other day where I was like, I've been in this space long enough to remember when the AI influencers today were actually Web3 influencers and before were AI influencers. So, but that being said, what's been really interesting, I think, that we've learned so far, for those of us in Web3 at least, with this latest AI hype cycle, is just how important blockchain is to AI. And so I'd love if either of you could touch on that, if you agree with it or disagree for that matter. I'd love to hear your take and your thoughts about the importance of blockchain in relation to AI.
Okay, so I actually retweeted one of the tweets it's kind of like a joke, but I really like. And I think that we as humans, we are like to building some gods or building something. So the blockchain is kind of like we are trying to building a digital nation, digital country with a lot of rules, with a lot of like smart contract, like the code is a lot. But the AI is kind of like we're building a digital god. So there's something that is know everything, and then we can write prompt, pray to them, and then God can give us some answers.
So it's not a surprise to me that somebody who's really, really deep in AI then formed a blockchain company, and that's like, whether you believe in WorldCoin or not, you start really starting to be concerned about like what is a human and being able to test truth versus not, or identities versus not. And actually that was the reason why you started WorldCoin, is so that you could start actually proving that you're human and have a digital identity that is verifiable from some accrediting agency. Now, how the accreditation happens, I don't want to get into like any of the controversy or like it's obviously a newly explored space, but that tenet holds for sure, is that as you have this digital god, just like and it starts looking more and more like a human. How do I represent myself and show that I'm myself and have a history and can represent myself? And the cryptographic signatures and having a public database so nobody owns it, especially not an AI doesn't own it, is potentially like a really powerful thing. And then there's just a bunch of practical layers. If you have AI that has a bunch of different parts of the stack, from generating data to like utilizing data out in the real world to compute, both training and serving the models and all that stuff. There's just a lot of potential layers there that have a lot of frictions today. Right, and then today you just have like NVIDIA or GCP or AWS just own the whole thing. But as there's no reason why that needs to happen, and there's a lot of inefficiencies in that model. And there's this whole idea of like a machine-to-machine economy, and the machine is asking for data from some other source. Why would it generate a Stripe account and a bank account and all that stuff? It's just easier for a machine just to generate a key pair, start paying other people and start generating revenue from the things that it's creating. All of a sudden you just have a really easy digital economy where all you're doing is passing bits around, and us humans can just kind of go on our merry way with this really efficient thing on the underhood. So you have like this whole spectrum from like very, very like existential, what are humans in this economy, all the way to just efficiency layers that I think blockchain and AI could find product market fit in cooperation.
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit too actually on this, because this is something that we're doing at NIFMIT and thinking a lot about is, when you think about it from the point of origin, when you're talking about, so we work with brands and you're thinking about a brand, you purchase something from the brand because you respect the brand, you like the brand, you care about what they offer, etc. And you're trusting that it's basically made in the manufacturer that said it was, it's not a copy, it's not a fake, etc. So now you start thinking about this when from the physical standpoint, you're like, okay, well, how do I prove that something is real? Well, there's some sort of authenticating body, etc. And then like, how does that continuously like live on? And so that's where I think like this whole notion of understanding like, well, what is being created by a human or created by the entity versus what has been auto-generated or what's like a counterfeit overall. And so ultimately there does need to be a level of trust. Like you need to have a level of trust in the authenticating body. So whether that be like some sort of third-party authentication body or the brand itself or the organization itself, right? But I do think that, especially with all these advancements in AI, we're really seeing the fact that you do need to think about tokenizing these items for the sheer fact of making sure that it is in fact what it is. It can't be replicated later. And right now there's a lot of friction and tension around that because the tooling isn't fully there. But we've seen that across multiple facets of the internet, right? Like if you think about logging onto the internet for that matter, you had to do it via command line a long time ago, and now we just have browsers that do these things. So whenever I think about AI and like this whole like deep, I always think about Tom Cruise. I don't know if anybody else does, but has anybody ever seen like deep fake Tom Cruise? Oh yeah. So that's why whenever I think about like this use case, I just like imagine Tom Cruise, but the deep fake Tom Cruise, right? But it'll definitely be a thing. You know, we're already starting to see like the early aspects of it, and right now it's probably in this very I don't want to say juvenile, but like call it like a misdemeanor type form, but like wait till it gets to a form where it's like, oh wow, like serious decisions or there's serious impact here. We need to understand this. So then with come along that, you know, both of you being on protocol level, how are you thinking about use cases, and you know, what are things that you focus on? Is it how do you have relationships directly with either corporations, organizations, or are you trying to more work with developers? Or walk us through how you, when you're thinking about a use case, is it Solana, is it ArcBlock that is tackling the use case, or is it you all creating the tool sets to allow someone else to create the use case, or is it a little bit of both?
I think one of the things blockchain does pretty poorly is working back from the customer. I think that's one of the things that Amazon does super well, is just always think about what is the end problem I'm trying to solve, how I'm going to solve it, and have a lot of conviction on that. So we still do that, but at our layer we are certainly building the really core primitives to unlock these things. But we just do so in a way that it's a step below, but it's what is going to enable the developer to do the things that we that we think are going to be the big bets and the things there. And then there's a little bit of facilitation of actual businesses themselves, help them get off the ground, help them accelerate. Kind of as you're alluding to, there's just a lot of pieces. That's one of the complexities with blockchain, is that I think a lot of people in this room could probably name 10 things that blockchain does really well, but you can also name 10 things that it doesn't do so well. So we try to just reduce those frictions and provide and let them know who solved which problems that they could collaborate with. But yeah, at the core, it's kind of like naming all the just different areas where there's a friction in the current models and where blockchain could potentially ease those frictions, and then what are the core primitives and the core protocol level features that we can facilitate.
Yeah, for us, and I think this question for us is pretty simple and straightforward, because we're building tools for developers. So whatever developer want to build, we try to enable them. So I can share some story that how we get to there, and how we eventually from doing, we find what to do by doing things. Right? So the initial step that we try to build with AI, with the blockchain, is purely treat AI as one of the modules. We build a module called AI Kit. So it has nothing to do with blockchain, but it's just a reusable library that anybody who can develop a blockchain applications, they can get into this AI Kit, so they can get some ChatGPT-alike capability into the applications. This is very simple. It's very simple integration. But then when we have an eco project, they try to build something with this AI capability. We find out, oh shoot, we need something else. One really important thing is privacy and users' data for the AI. Because if you're building some AI stuff, and you are all sending all those data to the AI models hosted in OpenAI, and then that creates a privacy issue. Especially, for example, one of our eco project is building a very interesting application called AI astrology. So it's an astrologist with AI, but then the customer is actually sending a lot of very private information into the AI. So how to protect this? I think in this case, the decentralized identity, the blockchain technology, which is great to enabling a better user privacy, right? So that's we coming into this, and then we kind of adopting. So how do we adopt the decentralized identity? How to enable this kind of my data protocol into this AI application, and then we use the blockchain into it, right? So the other use case is pretty straightforward. We have tools called NFC Studio. So in the past case, is people have creators that create a lot of kind of digital assets, and then they blend them into the NFTs. Right? So usually an artist do a lot of those kind of asset works, create 100 different characters, hundreds of different kind of background, and then blend them into many different compositions. And with AI, we integrate with AI GC backend, so that we enable any developer team, if you want to create an NFT project, you just have some kind of concept, and then the AI use the AI generated content to automatically create the characters, automatically create the assets, and then you don't really need graphic designers, and then you can create the NFTs with AIs. So that's kind of like two very early projects that we worked on our ecosystem, and it's kind of become more and more important related to the blockchain. And eventually we found, when we found different developers building these AIs, we found that the prompt is an automated tool that we're lacking. The prompt basically means, the prompt is basically the new language that you talk to the AI. In the past, when we talk to a computer, is about writing the code, right? But the prompt is a new code. You talk to the AI with prompt. It's kind of like a new code without writing any code. But then you can adopt a lot of interesting things that is in the programmer world, for example, like a version control, like how to kind of do the automatic test automation, how to evaluate your result, how to deploy your prompt. So that's how in the last couple months, we are kind of building a new tool within our platform, which is very much focused on how to do the prompt engineering. And so if our developers, they want to build a new AI applications, they want to kind of have a better engineering focused prompt tool to talk to the AI. So that's how it works, right? So we kind of build this by doing this, and then eventually figure out what to do.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that, right? Like, building it and just trying to testing with it, etc., seeing what works on that side. For me, what's really interesting to think about is how Web3 has left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, right? And so I would say whoever's like in charge of PR for Web3 like didn't do the best job. And like the PR team behind AI is crushing it, right? And I think that's a little bit because it seems as though like the Chat GPT moment, the DALL-E moments, etc., with Mid-Journey, like these sorts of things, like you can do something with it and you can see it and you can play with it, and so like there's like this ability to utilize it really quickly. Now that didn't exist, of course, before this. Why do you all think that Web3 has, call it like, it's not as interesting from an investor side or even from a public perception side as compared to AI? And then do you think that it will in fact, call it mirror AI or get to a similar spot? And I have my thoughts that I'll share after you all.
I think a lot of it is because the stuff in blockchain is financial first, so that you can have a lot of just consumer pains and things that society typically protects against. Now I think that side of it's overreaching now, but there is people that are pitching moonshots and financial freedoms and all these other things in ways that are really low-hanging fruit and often scams. And so that's the easy stuff to build. When you have all these frictions and hard problems to solve, usually the you know, the things that aren't actually building complex. They're just going off of some sort of speculation and promises and all these other things, but not actual value creation. Whereas AI went right to free, loss leader, consumer apps and stuff like that that haven't really found product market fit, but consumers like the memes and enjoy it. So that's why it has a positive taste. But I would actually say that even today, I would say that AI has been more destructive in some ways. Just think about social media, ad economy, all these things. Like those are certainly have some very negative ramifications to them. Just that the natural person doesn't, they blame Facebook, they blame the platform and not necessarily the AI. Yeah, so you're right, like I think it's just like a PR kind of issue where, yeah, and I think the reality is I think when blockchain hits its like peak awesome, it's going to be kind of boring. I don't think we're not going to have these, right now it's like the speculation that's kind of exciting and stuff, but like at the end of the day, it's like this low friction layer. Yeah. And it's this transparent and and its best days, it's just transparent kind of cool, I can see what I'm doing and I don't have to trust people or whatever. Eventually that's going to be kind of boring. Just like we log into our email and just check our email, it's kind of boring. And so I don't know if blockchain will ever be sexy in its positive form.
I always love saying, I always love saying that boring NFTs will take over the world. Yeah, because totally. To your point, it's like it's going to be a lot of the boring stuff.
Exactly. Like I now have an understanding that I own this digital thing, and people understand when I trade it. Like it's cool to own the digital thing and stuff like that, but the underlying technology, well, who cares? I just want my stuff. And I think that the more and more you abstract away all the technical underpinnings, people don't care about all that stuff. Like the same way, the thing I like to think about is like HTTP to HTTPS. I don't know if anybody here even understands what I'm talking about, but it was a major thing in the internet to security, and it kind of just happened under the hood for the natural consumer. But it gave so many assurances to websites actually attesting to who they are and they're being accredited and all these things. And blockchain will give you that in its best form, but it'll be boring.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and imagine like in that time if people were like, no, you know, like us as consumers, like we need to like understand and hold our own key management for logging onto the internet, right? Like, like we have to keep it that way. No, it's like we have to make it more available for people to get online.
Yeah, there's actually a really good example of that happening right now. Apple, whenever you do, it's called passkeys, this is with the Apple branding of it, but the open source version is WebAuthn, and it's basically using same cryptography that blockchain uses to replace passwords. So what Apple does is they just hold a private key for you, and they just sign that this is me signing on. And so instead of you having username and password, like Apple does it. And that's the same idea that crypto is just slightly different configuration. And so one of the things that we're doing at Solana is just making that login just as seamless as that, and actually just using that same system. So you can sign for stuff on the blockchain just using your Face ID or whatever it is. And so like these things are just abstracted entirely away from the user, but now they can use crypto.
Yeah, one thing that's always fun is when you talk to a developer who maybe not be as hot about blockchain and you say the word token and they think about token from like packet of information. Right. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what a token is. It's a packet of information.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Jonathan said it's right. I think there's a lot of PR person definitely need to be responsible to make the Web3 and the blockchain bad. But I'm not too much worried about this because I have been in the industry for a little bit long, so I experienced the internet booming and the dot-com crash, and then I see the AI is booming up. Actually, you know, a secret a lot of people don't know that art block was not called art block before when it started. It's called a semantic chain. Why it's called a semantic chain? Because at the time, the early stage, we are trying to building AI application that is trying to do the NLP stuff, and we only want to use really get inspired by Ethereum, want to use Ethereum just as a payment system. But then eventually we found out Ethereum is not ready, and also a bad thing is the previous wave, the AI is fulfilled with bad guys. So they're doing a lot of this kind of model and mostly focus on the face recognition to do. To invade people's privacy, and the AI at that time is not that great, and also a lot of guys raise a lot of money doing nothing. And I could say it's as worse as blockchain, you see. So eventually, but for this round, and the OpenAI, actually, the large language model is actually doing a lot more good things, but it could do bad things. Yeah, I can totally see it could happen very quickly, especially when the self-host open source models that without good alignment, it could do a lot of bad things. So let's see.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I think what's interesting, and just my take on this too, is our relationship or our association with data has changed so much from, call it like the Facebook early days, right? And like, so I remember when Cambridge Analytica happened and so many people were bothered about like their data being sold. And you'd have people messaging or saying this from Instagram, like, I'm never using Facebook again, from their Instagram account, right? And so like our understanding of data has totally like changed, and like our allowance of how people use our data has changed. So I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's why AI is getting a little bit of a pass right now. But everything that you're bringing up is incredibly valid, right? It's like that, you know, the manipulation of that data and the interpretation of that data is all what matters, right? And how the model learns. I think the problem with Web3 has been, you know, the financial industry is heavily regulated, as it should be, of course. And so, you know, when you have a couple mavericks kind of come in and just say like, hey, like, well, we're going to forget about the regulation and just try to do it however we see fit, you know, that can create an issue. But also for the good players in the room, because I think there's a lot more people doing good in Web3 than there are bad players. Unfortunately, the bad players is what gets the attention. Is you're also trying to change a financial system that has been going the same way for a couple hundred years, right? Arguably, you know, since the beginning of the financial system. So ultimately, that's going to create some pressure. Which is interesting to me as to like why CBDCs become really interesting. Like, I'm personally not a fan of CBDCs, but I can see as a government or as a centralized bank, like why you would want that. It would be amazing. Like, if I'm a product manager, right? So from a product manager's perspective, if I'm working in that field and I can say like, hey, we can turn things on and off and allow it, you know, it's an easier way to kind of run a financial economy. But, you know, how do you all think about the, you know, we kind of went down this path of like the bad, but like, how do you think about some of these things like CBDCs or things that where kind of blockchain starts to get a little bit, call it outside of its ethos, but also more, you know, it's a very valid use case. Whether or not you agree with the use case, the CBDC is a valid use case for an entity to use. Even though that might not fall in line with, call it like the original blockchain point of view, etc.
Yeah, I kind of think of it similar to the internet works. So the internet is kind of this open protocol, even the way that we register domains and route and all that stuff is. It's like open protocols and decentralized in a lot of sense, but then you're routing through these centralized entities. I think blockchain will kind of work pretty similarly. Will it be a public blockchain, public space for assets, kind of what you're saying? I think most things are just going to be digital, especially the digital assets are going to be tokenized, and more real world things are going to be tokenized with an accrediting agency. That accrediting agency will be centralized in some way. So it's not like everything needs to be completely decentralized. There's just going to be more transparency around the way things access or don't access the digital, wherever they touch digitally. And so CDBCs, I mean, you have a government that's there. They're acting on behalf of the citizens, and or hopefully, yeah. So and they have their their own minting and their own whatever government protocol thing, and then they just want to, if they want to interact with the open asset system that is Web3 or whatever you want to call it, like the public blockchain ecosystem, they can do so more directly now. So that's like one of the things I work on, is just making sure that those connections are as seamless as possible. Through CDBCs, bridges to other ecosystems, on-ramp, off-ramps, just whatever fiat. So to me, it's just about connectivity of our digital. More and more of our lives, more of our identities are becoming more digital. So to me, it's just like that evolution. I don't think we're going to get rid of centralized entities as we know them today, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think decentralization, what is decentralizing, which is centralized, what is decentralized, that is a very relative concept. When the whole society of whole people getting more understanding what blockchain is, what the crypto is, I think it more and more become more forgiving, the decentralization part, right? Imagine 5 years ago, when you say Solana's architect, you will get kind of buried by the Bitcoin maximalists. So if you tell anybody about this layer 2,
Solana was -2 years old 5 years ago.
if you talk any layer 2 like roll-ups, you talk to like 5 years ago, people will say, "What? This is so centralized. How this is completely like a shit, right?" But today we think, okay, so even Ethereum foundation think roll-up and those layer 2 is the future, right? So I think that people just become more and more forgiving, and the centralization or decentralization, I think it is just kind of like, oh, let's go left, and then, oh, it's too much left, let's go right. It's kind of like this kind of, shaking all the way. So I believe that there's always need to be a balance between like very much centralized and very much decentralized. For example, like a CBDC, since it's called a CBDC, it's by design, it's centralized, right? It must be controlled by some kind of entity. But do we really need that? I think the blockchain, the crypto world already realized that. That's why USDT is there, right? Because when you try to become Ethereum, all of those, you really want something that is kind of has a stable value with some kind of a finance. And so that's a need. That's a customer's need. So I think if the government step in and there's some kind of CBDC eventually come, I think that's a very positive development, because we need it.
Yeah, I have an interesting take on this, because if you think about it, like who owns currency, or who owns currency at the end of the day, right? And so like there's the Federal Reserve, there's these entities, banking institutions, etc. And so if we kind of flip for a second and we think about like the MP3 days, you could listen to any song in the world, right? If you were sophisticated enough, you could listen to any song in the world. You could illegally download music, but you were also taking away from the music industry at that moment in time, who owns all the music. And so, instead of the music industry, and rightfully so, instead of them saying like, oh, we're not going to allow anybody to download music or to stream music, like, okay, I guess we'll just become a part of this overall. And I kind of think about that in a similar way when we think about like cryptocurrency. Is like the banks can basically be like, oh, we're not going to allow for any crypto whatsoever, or we're going to force people into like these legacy systems. Or like, wait a second, like this actually works better. We might as well like leverage this technology for what makes sense for our business. Overall. So at the end of the day, we have to remember that corporations are profit maximizing institutions, right? Like they report to their shareholders, and that's always going to be the case. Like that's why whenever I hear of like a corporation talking about decentralization, I laugh really hard, because though that person within the organization might care about it, I would be willing to bet that they won't be able to get anything passed in any sort of like meaningful board meeting to allow that to happen. But that being said, it doesn't mean you can't learn from that and you can't take aspects of that and apply it to the business. And the last thing I will say is, while I don't think any incumbent business will turn decentralized and find success with it, I do think there's interesting opportunities for organizations to natively start in a decentralized fashion and challenge incumbents. I do think that that's very much a possibility. So how much time? Okay, so we have a few minutes left. I'd love to open it up to questions from anybody in the audience, if you have. Go ahead, Christine.
So, quick question for Matt from Solana. We're here on an AI panel, and Solana has had issues around vulnerabilities. As Director of Technology, what is Solana doing to prepare Solana Chain for being a leader in AI development and positive impact in the cybersecurity world?
The protocol itself has never had a vulnerability.
Sorry, the bridges, not yours, the bridges that
Thank
you.
Sure.
Good clarification.
Yeah, I mean, when you have 10,000 startups, some of them are not going to do the most, they're going to have poor engineering practices. Actually, this is something we are working on directly. A lot of it's actually related to AI in terms of fuzzers and other things where the debuggers that are more advanced. Think like, you hear a lot about Copilot, which is like the branded GitHub tool, but you can do stuff like that with AI just to make sure you're doing the best practices. Once you find a paradigm in which a bug can occur, then you use AI to make sure that your code doesn't follow on that same paradigm. And they're actually really good at it. I mean, that's one of the main things AI can do is pattern match to, yeah, just things it's seen before. So it's one of the main benefits of things being kind of open source and kind of out there is that once things kind of harden or you see a new way of attack vector, then all things can prepare against that attack vector. So some of it's proactive fuzzers are the proactive method. You just kind of hit it from all known angles that are possible, all entry points. And then there's the reactive as fast as possible with incentive mechanisms and other things where you encourage your community to attack different aspects of the wallet ecosystem or DeFi or other things like that, and then alert the people that are responsible. Yeah, it's kind of like security is like always like that P0 thing that you're always behind the hood is a significant portion of our time. But again, it's like not the sexy stuff that, yeah.
I want to add a little bit because I happen to see one of the project that is doing is using the GPT model to explain the transaction to the users. Right? Right now today in any of those ecosystems, if a user want to approve a transaction, usually they have nothing. They don't understand what is going on. Right? So I see one of our eco project. What they try to do, they interpret the transaction and they explain that in neutral language to let the user understand. Hey, this is a transaction doing this, and this could be potentially risky. And you don't want to approve that. So I think this could be helpful for improve the blockchain security part.
Does anybody else have a question?
Stuck inside.